Hi, I'm Sexy. I'm a modder for Stardew Valley. In this video, I'll be giving you a background on mapping. So to get started, go to your Content Unpacked folder and you can see your Maps folder. Go ahead and copy this folder and paste it somewhere else. I just pasted mine on my desktop. I'm going to open this folder. Now with a completely new folder, we can manipulate and edit any of these files as much as we want. And notice in this folder, we have both the map file and tile sheets. It'll cause error if you have the map file and the tile sheets in different folders. To start, you can open up the farm tmx file. However, I made my own file called example. Just make things a little bit easier to comprehend. I typically refer to maps as tmx, but there is another file type. It's called TBIN, but it tends to have disadvantages. For TMX, you can flip tiles, you can rotate tiles, and technically you can edit the code of the TMX file. However, if you do want to use TBIN, if you go to Preferences, you'll need to go to the Plugins tab and allow TBIN DLL. To save as TMX, you can do Save As, and then save right here TMX. So before getting started, let's go ahead and adjust our settings. It might be helpful to go to View and highlight current layer. That tends to be helpful for new mappers, but I have not used that, but I recommend using it. If you go to View and then Snapping, you want to snap to grid. So that will be helpful whenever you deal with the tile properties. If you go to the map properties, we have different types of tile layer formats. So generally the game goes in CSV, and I also recommend using CSV. However, other formats work, such as base64 zlib compressed, base64 gzip compressed, and I believe base64 uncompressed might work as well. Base64 Z standard compressed may not work for Stardew Valley. Base64 zlib, that would compress the most, and then base64 gzip might compress the second most. But when you use compressed map files, it might cause the game to load more slowly. So it tends to be recommended to use CSV. The game uses compression level 0, so I set mine as 0 as well. You can add map properties and delete them. One thing you could do is go to Stardew Valley Wiki. And if you scroll down, we can go to find the maps. Here it is, locations and map. We're going to click on maps. Click right here, known map properties. Click on that. And these are a bunch of map properties you can use. These are probably the most important: warps and map positions. However, this is not in the scope of this video, so we'll talk about it in a later video. So typically, you have your outdoors. If it's an outdoor map, you need a T. Technically, you can use any character. For warp, you start with the coordinates on your map, followed by where it's going to and the coordinate of where you're going to. Hit the plus button, make sure it's on string, enter your map property. Let's talk about the layers. So back layer is basically the ground where the player can step on. If you need to make an extra layer, you can do this and then back 1. You could also do, if you need to put a layer underneath that, you could do back -1. Same thing with any other layer, except I don't think we need it for the paths. But for buildings, this layer is where the player cannot step into unless it applies like a tile property that allows that tile to be passable. But for the most part, you cannot step through the buildings layer. Paths layer, if you go to the paths tile sheet, these will have it spawn different things, such as this stone. If you want to put debris, you can, like this. And you can also put grass, bluegrass, trees. Most of these trees are up here. I think this is oak. This one's a pine. These are bushes, so this is the small bush. This is the medium bush, and the large bush here. Only the medium-sized bush will produce berries, unless you can use some sort of framework. Tile like this in the path layer, whenever the player comes close, they'll hear the sound called the brook sounds, which is like the water that's flowing through like a river or a creek. If you need lights, there's light right here, but I think this one only affects indoor maps. These red circles tends to be for like placeholders. This tends to be used for like the farmhouse or the greenhouse. And you can look more in detail on the maps website. If you go down to this part right here, you'll have a better description. The front layer tends to be used for like a tree. This base part in the buildings layer, then you'll have one row in the front layer, so like this one, and then the rest goes in the always front. So for the front layer, if the player is in front of the tree, it'll be in front of it. But once they step closer to the front layer, then eventually they'll get behind the tree. So typically I find that it's best if it's just one row within the front layer. If you try to put two or more, it can cause issues. Let's talk about the tile properties. So we can go up here and go to number 6, known tile properties. So there's a difference between map properties and tile properties. Map properties tends to be based on the entire map and is less likely to be dynamic. Whereas tile properties, they're a bit more dynamic. You can like manipulate them. A tile property that one may use, no spawn. So in case you don't want debris at that spot. So what you want to do is follow which layer it is using. So for no spawn, it's going to be in the back layer. The other layer that it might use could be buildings and paths. I'll show you how to add a tile property. So before starting, I like to have my selection on the rectangle tool, this gray one, and on the back layer. So I can avoid either like erasing a tile or putting another tile down. So now we're in our default. We need to go put a tile property. So we need to click on this purple layer and we need to click on the back layer. So then we can click on this rectangle tool, insert rectangle or the R key. And then since we have the snap to grid, what you want to do is press and hold from one corner to the other corner of the tile. Then it'll have this slightly gray tile data. Before you put in the tile data, you also need to name this. We need to name it tile data. And I capitalize a T and a D in it. Next, you could press the plus button down here and we could add no spawn. And then let's check back what we can put in here. So there's a bunch of options. We could do all or true. They act as the same thing. Either do false, grass, or tree. So I'll put all right here. And that's how you do a typical tile property. Something to note is that you can only put one tile data on a layer in that same coordinate. So if you need to put multiple tile datas, you should add them in the same one. Otherwise, you can't just make two of these and put it in the same coordinate in the same layer. You'll need to put like the other one in a different layer. I'm going to put it into the buildings layer here. So, and then this way, it could be possible. So that is a possible issue that you may encounter. So let's talk about tile properties in the tile sheets. So if we look at, let's say this tile sheet, we can click on one of these tiles. So let me zoom in a little bit more. Let's look at this one and notice that there are additional tile properties. This tile comes with type grass and it's also buildable. If you want to have a tile property for an entire tile, then you can include it in here. If you only just want a coordinate of a tile, then you have to do it manually like this. You might see these white lines at the bottom corner of a tile. These are animation tiles. So you can click right, I think it's right here for tile animation. You can also click on tileset in tile animation editor. So let's see if we can try to create an animation. So we could try creating an animation with this pinwheel. So what you could do is make sure you're pressing on one, then you click on this tile animation editor. You could put your frame duration and then click apply to change the default. But let's go ahead and click this. So I'm going to double click this, each of these. And notice that they're being added into here. And you can see the animation happening here as well. Then we can close this and let's try placing it onto this map. It tends to be maybe the front layer. If you notice this white line, it means there's an animation. So we click on this, put it on the front layer, and there it is. Map tiles and tile sheets must be in the same folder. You'll need to connect that. So what you can do is go to tileset properties, go down to image, click on this spring outdoors tile sheet, click on edit, and make sure that it's selecting the tile sheet that's in the same folder as the TMX file. If you want to add another tile sheet from the folder, what you can do is click on new tileset. You can click on browse, and let's add the waterfall. Here it is. Click open, and you also want to click right here, embedded in map, and click OK. If you have a seasonal tile sheets, it'll have the season in front of it. Including custom tile sheets, they should have the season in front of that name. If you have a custom tile sheets that is not a season, you want to name it Z underscore. That tends to be the format, as long as it's in the most right side of this tile sheet tab, then you've done it correctly. You want your vanilla tile sheets on the left side of tabs. And notice that in the spring waterfall that it doesn't have any of the animation. So let's say if I want to grab the animation, let's go to our maps folder again and find a map that has the waterfall animation. So I know that waterfalls are a 1.6 update. So if I go to the farm and I can click on farm ranching, that one has waterfalls in it. There are waterfalls right here. So notice that in this one, it has these animations. So what I could do is click on export as. I can export as a .tsx and I could save it. Notice that there's an asterisk on these. That means it's not saved. Even though if I click on this tile sheet and I see the animation, I'm like, oh, I'm surely that is part of my map. But if I look down here, it's all grayed out. That means it's not part of this map. So what I want to do is click on this one. And if I notice these are colored, this tile sheet is part of this map. So I need to work with this. So next I can click on replace tileset and find that .tsx file. I can open that. And now I see it, but you're not done yet. You need to click on this one. It's called embedded tileset. So click on that and you're done. From here, you'll want to save. So click Control S to save. I also like to delete that .tsx file. If you can successfully delete a .tsx file, that means your map is doing well. Yep. We don't see that other spring waterfall tile sheet because it was from the ranching. Save your file, and once you're done mapping, I can create my own folder here. Farm, sexy. Eventually I'll create my content and my manifest, but I can create my assets folder. Then I'll want to put the TMX file and the tile sheets that are not vanilla in here. If I go to maps, I can click right here, example. I'll put this in here. But if you remember, I added the bathhouse tile sheet as a custom tile sheet. So I would need to put that custom tile sheet in here as well. Otherwise, for vanilla tile sheets, you don't need to put in here because it's already loaded in the maps folder. In a different video, I'll be showing how to set up your farm, mostly in the content file.